Imagine standing in a crowded square, surrounded by the shouts of citizens passionately debating the fate of their city. The scent of freshly baked bread fills the air, and the hum of lively discussion echoes off the stone walls of grand public buildings. This scene could be ancient Athens or ancient Rome, two of the most iconic civilizations in history. Both cities gave rise to democratic systems that in their own ways shaped the world forever. But how did these two ancient powerhouses, Rome and Greece, define democracy differently? Ancient Greece, specifically Athens, introduced the concept of direct democracy, where citizens themselves took an active role in governing. Meanwhile, ancient Rome developed a complex republican system, which combined elements of democracy with aristocratic rule. Although both systems were revolutionary in their time, they were far from identical. While the Athenians thrived on participation and debate, the Romans built a representative system that allowed their vast empire to be governed through elected officials. This story will take you through the roads traveled by both Athens and Rome as they developed their systems of governance. You will learn how they defined citizenship, handled political power, and how these different approaches eventually led to both their triumphs and downfalls. Ultimately, you will discover how these two ancient democracies, despite their differences, laid the groundwork for the modern political systems we see today. To understand Athenian democracy, we must travel back to the 7th century BCE, a time when Athens was still evolving from a monarchy into a political system that allowed greater participation. Originally, Athens, like many other Greek city-states, was ruled by kings. Over time, however, this gave way to an aristocracy in which wealthy landowners held most of the political power. The first significant reform in Athens came from a lawmaker named Draco. In the 7th century BCE, Draco instituted a harsh legal code known for its severity, hence the modern term draconian to describe overly harsh measures. Despite the severity of Draco's laws, they were an important first step toward codifying the laws and ensuring that justice applied to everyone, not just the elite. Draco's legal reforms gave Athens a foundation of order and justice, which would later evolve into the democratic process. The second major step toward democracy came with the statesman Solon. Solon, appointed as an archon, chief magistrate, in 594 BCE, was tasked with addressing the growing economic and political inequality in Athens. His reforms were sweeping. First, he abolished debt slavery, freeing many Athenians who had been forced into servitude because of unpaid debts. Second, he restructured the political system, dividing the population into 4 classes based on wealth, not birth. This change allowed wealthier citizens to participate in government, but prevented the aristocracy from monopolizing power. Solon's reforms were revolutionary, but they were just the beginning. The real birth of Athenian democracy came under Clisthenes, who is often called the father of Athenian democracy. In 508 BCE, Clisthenes introduced a series of reforms that radically transformed Athens' political landscape. He reorganized the citizen body into 10 tribes, each representing a mix of Athenians from different regions. This helped to break the power of the old aristocratic families and created a new sense of unity among the citizens. Under Clisthenes, the ecclesia, or popular assembly, became the cornerstone of Athenian democracy. In this assembly, all male citizens could gather, debate, and vote on laws and policies. Decisions were made by majority vote, with each citizen having an equal say. It was a remarkable system, especially considering that no other society at the time allowed ordinary people to participate so directly in government. In its fully developed form, Athenian democracy was an extraordinary experiment in direct governance. Every male citizen over the age of 18 could participate in the ecclesia. Meetings were held several times a month, and citizens would gather on the hill of the Pnyx to discuss and vote on a wide range of issues. These included everything from foreign policy to new laws to public infrastructure projects. The Athenian system wasn't just about large assemblies, however. There was also the Boule, or Council of 500, a body of citizens chosen by lottery to serve for 1 year. The Boule was responsible for preparing the agenda for the ecclesia and managing the city's day-to-day affairs. By using a lottery system, Athens ensured that even ordinary citizens could have a chance to participate in government, reducing the risk of power becoming concentrated in the hands of a few elites. The legal system in Athens was similarly participatory. The dicasteria, or people's courts, were made up of large juries chosen by lottery from the pool of citizens. These juries could consist of hundreds of citizens, and their decisions were final. Unlike modern courts, where professional judges and lawyers handle cases, the Athenian system placed justice directly in the hands of the people. This system of governance was remarkable in its inclusivity, at least for male citizens. Every eligible man had a chance to participate, regardless of wealth or social status. This direct involvement in decision-making fostered a strong sense of civic duty and pride among the Athenian people. For all its strengths, Athenian democracy had its limitations. While it was revolutionary in allowing ordinary citizens to have a say in government, it was far from inclusive by modern standards. Only free adult males who were born in Athens to Athenian parents could participate. Women, slaves, and foreigners, known as metics, were excluded from the political process entirely. This meant that a significant portion of the population had no voice in the government. Despite this, Athenian democracy was celebrated as a beacon of freedom and participation by its supporters. However, it also had its critics. One of the most famous critics was Socrates, the philosopher who believed that democracy allowed unqualified people to make important decisions. Socrates questioned the wisdom of letting everyone, regardless of knowledge or expertise, have an equal say in governance. He famously compared democracy to a ship's captain letting the untrained crew decide how to navigate the seas, arguing that governance should be left to those with the knowledge and experience to do so. Plato, Socrates' student, was even more critical of democracy. In his work The Republic, Plato argued that democracy could easily lead to mob rule, where the masses, driven by emotion rather than reason, could make poor decisions. He believed that the ideal state would be ruled by philosopher kings, wise and educated rulers who would make decisions in the best interests of the people. Aristotle, another student of Plato, was more supportive of democracy, but also recognized its potential flaws. He favored a mixed system that balanced the interests of the wealthy and the poor, ensuring that no one group could dominate the government. The decline of Athenian democracy war and internal struggles. Athenian democracy reached its peak in the 5th century BCE, but it wasn't immune to external and internal challenges. The most significant threat to Athenian democracy came in the form of war. The Persian Wars, from 490 to 479 BCE, saw Athens successfully defend itself against the might of the Persian Empire. Under the leadership of generals like Themistocles, Athens emerged victorious and solidified its position as one of the most powerful city-states in Greece. However, victory came at a cost. Athens' growing power and influence made it a target for rival city-states, particularly Sparta. The Peloponnesian War from 431 to 404 BCE between Athens and Sparta was a devastating conflict that ultimately led to the downfall of Athenian democracy. The war drained Athens of its resources and weakened its government. In 411 BCE, a group of oligarchs briefly overthrew the democratic government and established the 400, an oligarchic regime. Although democracy was restored a few years later, the damage had been done. In 404 BCE, Athens was defeated by Sparta, and its democracy never fully recovered. While Athens remained an important city, its political system became increasingly unstable, and the ideals of direct democracy began to fade. The Roman Republic, a different kind of democracy. While Athens was experimenting with direct democracy, Rome was developing a different approach to governance. The Roman Republic, established in 509 BCE, was a complex system that blended elements of democracy, oligarchy, and monarchy. Unlike the Athenians, who embraced direct participation, the Romans favored a representative system where elected officials made decisions on behalf of the people. The Roman Republic was built around a series of checks and balances designed to prevent any one individual or group from gaining too much power. At the top of the system were the consuls, two officials who were elected by Roman citizens to serve as the executive branch of the government. Consuls held office for 1 year and were responsible for commanding the army, overseeing the administration of the government, and carrying out the laws passed by the Roman Senate. The Senate was the most powerful institution in the Roman Republic. Unlike the Athenian ecclesia, where every citizen could participate, the Roman Senate was dominated by the patricians, the wealthy aristocrats who controlled much of the political and economic life of the city. Senators served for life and wielded immense influence over Roman politics. They advised the consuls, controlled the treasury, and made decisions about foreign policy. While the Senate was dominated by the elite, the Roman Republic also had a system to protect the interests of the common people, or plebeians. The Concilium Plebis, or assembly of the plebeians, elected officials known as tribunes. The tribunes had the power to veto decisions made by the Senate or the consuls, giving the plebeians a voice in the government. Over time, the plebeians gained more rights, and the balance of power between the patricians and plebeians became more equitable. The Roman legal system, the foundation of Western law. One of the most important contributions of the Roman Republic was its legal system, which laid the groundwork for much of Western law. The Romans believed that laws should be written down and applied equally to all citizens. This idea was embodied in the 12 Tables, a set of laws written in the 5th century BCE. The 12 Tables were displayed in the Roman Forum for all citizens to see, ensuring that everyone knew their rights and responsibilities. Roman law was based on the principle of jus civile, or civil law, which applied to Roman citizens. As Rome expanded and incorporated people from different regions, it developed jus gentium, or the law of nations, which applied to non-citizens. This legal framework helped to unify the Roman Empire and ensure that its vast and diverse population was governed by a common set of rules. Many principles of Roman law, such as the presumption of innocence and the right to a fair trial, continue to influence modern legal systems today. Rome's emphasis on law and order reflected its pragmatic approach to governance, focusing on stability and control rather than the idealism of Athenian democracy. Citizenship in Rome and Athens, a privilege and responsibility. In both Athens and Rome, citizenship was a coveted status, but the way it was defined and the rights it conferred were different. In Athens, citizenship was strictly limited. Only men born in Athens to Athenian parents could be citizens, and they had to fulfill certain obligations, such as military service and paying taxes. This exclusivity was meant to maintain a sense of unity and identity among the ruling population. In Rome, citizenship was initially reserved for free male inhabitants of the city, but as the Roman Republic expanded, so did the definition of citizenship. Rome began to grant citizenship to people from other regions, particularly in Italy, as a way to integrate conquered territories into the Roman system. By the end of the Republic, Roman citizenship was extended to many people across the empire, from Italy to Gaul and beyond. Despite these differences, citizenship in both Athens and Rome came with rights and responsibilities. Citizens could vote, own property, and participate in the government, but they were also expected to defend their city or empire in times of war and contribute to its upkeep. Military influence on democracy, Athenian hoplites, and Roman legions. Both Athens and Rome were militarized societies, and their military structures played a significant role in shaping their democracies. In Athens, the military was made up of citizen soldiers known as hoplites. These men were expected to provide their own armor and weapons, and they fought in tightly packed formations called phalanxes. Military service was considered a key part of citizenship, and it demonstrated one's commitment to the city. In Rome, the military was even more integral to the functioning of the Republic. The Roman legions were highly disciplined and well organized, and they played a crucial role in expanding the empire. Roman citizens were required to serve in the military, and many of the political leaders of the Republic, such as Julius Caesar, were also military commanders. The Roman military was a key source of power and prestige, and its influence on the government was undeniable. However, the relationship between the military and democracy was also a source of tension. In Athens, the hoplite class wielded significant influence in the ecclesia, as they were the ones who fought to defend the city. This created a divide between the wealthy hoplites and the poorer citizens who couldn't afford to serve in the military. In Rome, the legions became increasingly loyal to their commanders rather than the Republic, which ultimately contributed to the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. The fall of Athenian democracy, the Peloponnesian War and its aftermath. While Athenian democracy was a remarkable experiment in direct participation, it was not immune to challenges. The most significant threat to Athenian democracy came in the form of the Peloponnesian War, which lasted from 431 to 404 BCE. This was a devastating conflict between Athens and Sparta. The war was triggered by Athens' growing power and influence in the Greek world, which made it a target for rival city-states, particularly Sparta. The war was long and costly, draining Athens of its resources and weakening its government. As the war dragged on, internal strife grew and Athens experienced political instability. In 411 BCE, a group of oligarchs overthrew the democratic government and established the 400, an oligarchic regime that briefly held power. Although democracy was restored a few years later, the damage had been done. In 404 BCE, Athens was defeated by Sparta, and its democracy never fully recovered. While Athens remained an important city, its political system became increasingly unstable and the ideals of direct democracy began to fade. The fall of the Roman Republic, from democracy to empire. The fall of the Roman Republic was a slower process than the decline of Athenian democracy, but it was no less significant. Over the course of several centuries, Rome expanded from a small city-state to a vast empire. And this expansion put enormous strain on its political system. One of the key factors in the decline of the Roman Republic was the concentration of power in the hands of a few individuals. As Rome conquered new territories, its military commanders gained increasing influence. Men like Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus used their military victories to gain political power, and they formed alliances that undermined the traditional republican system. In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River with his army, effectively declaring war on the Roman Senate. His actions led to a civil war that ultimately ended with his appointment as dictator for life. Although Caesar was assassinated in 44 BCE, the Republic was already in decline. His grandnephew and heir, Octavian, later known as Augustus, emerged as the first emperor of Rome in 27 BCE, marking the end of the Republic and the beginning of the Roman Empire. Similarities and differences. A final reflection. While Athens and Rome developed very different systems of government, both made important contributions to the concept of democracy. Athens's direct democracy was an extraordinary experiment in giving power to the people, while Rome's republic introduced the idea of representation and checks and balances. Both systems had their strengths and weaknesses. Athenian democracy was more participatory, but it was also more chaotic and vulnerable to mob rule. Roman democracy was more stable and structured, but it was also dominated by the elite and ultimately gave way to authoritarian rule. Despite their differences, both Athens and Rome left a lasting legacy. The democratic ideals of participation, representation, and the rule of law that were developed in these ancient civilizations continue to influence modern political systems around the world. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of ancient democracies. The democracies of ancient Athens and Rome were not perfect, but they were bold experiments in self-governance. They showed that ordinary people could play a role in shaping their own destinies and that government should be accountable to the people it serves. Today, we can look back at these ancient systems with admiration and gratitude. The ideas of citizenship, justice, and participation that were developed in Athens and Rome have shaped the way we think about government and democracy. While neither system survived in its original form, their legacies continue to inspire us in our quest for freedom, equality, and justice. The story of Athenian and Roman democracy is one of innovation, struggle, and enduring influence. Though their paths diverged, both roads led to the same destination, the idea that government exists for the people and should be accountable to them. This is the true legacy of these two ancient democracies, and it is a legacy that continues to shape the world today. Please like and subscribe.